So today, as we study some miracles, we're going to be looking at a man of great faith. This was not Elijah who called down fire from heaven. This is not Daniel who went to a den of lions. This wasn't Moses who parted the Red Sea. This was another person who had unwavering faith. They had mustard seed faith, mountain moving faith. And this man said and did things that Jesus found amazing. And I feel like if something amazes Jesus, then it's worth our investigation. It's worth us looking into if it amazes Jesus. And here we see the story in Luke 7:1. It says, after Jesus finished saying all these things to the people who were listening, he went into Capernaum. Now, Capernaum was a small city on the Sea of Galilee, and it was the headquarters for Jesus' ministry. Many of the disciples that Jesus recruited was from Capernaum. In fact, we think that Peter probably lived there, and that could have even been like their base where they were going out from this area. He was regularly preaching in Capernaum. He did many miracles in Capernaum. This was a very prominent city, this Capernaum, but it was also under Roman rule. Romans had taken over Israel, and this was one of the towns that they had taken over, and it was a prominent town. Many people would travel to and through Capernaum, and so they would charge these people coming in and out of town, they would charge them taxes in order to come through, and this increased the wealth of Capernaum. They would hire Jews to take these taxes and collect them and pay them to the Roman government. They could inflate the prices if they wanted to and make a little bit extra for themselves. And this is where Jesus most likely found Matthew in Capernaum collecting taxes for the Romans here. It says in Luke 7:2 that a centurion's servant who was valuable to him was sick and about to die. A centurion was a Roman soldier, but not just any Roman soldier. He was a leader. He was an officer. He was also a Gentile, which meant that he was not of Jewish descent. He was part of the occupying force in the area. He was sent there to help maintain order. He was a centurion. He was a commander of around 100 soldiers who would be directly accountable to him. He was wealthy. Most centurions would get paid around 5 times the annual salary of a normal Roman soldier. In order to become a centurion, he had to be a master of every fighting skill taught to the Roman soldiers, because he would also be responsible for training and equipping them. He had to have the ability to inspire his men, had to be at least 30 years old, and had to serve for a number of years as a soldier himself before getting promoted to the title of centurion. Most importantly, though, a centurion had to be literate, had to be able to read and write. The reason for this is because they would need to obey orders immediately. They would get couriers that would bring orders written confidentially in scrolls, and the centurion would have to open it up, read it, and then dictate this to his forces. Being a centurion came with social status, and they held very high and powerful positions in society. So here's the centurion, but he has a servant. Now, if you look at this word servant, it actually means a little child, probably a boy, a young boy. Some people speculated it could have even been the centurion's son, but there was a problem with that because Roman soldiers were not allowed to marry while they were in service, being a soldier. So it would have been something that they would have kept hidden. We don't know if this was his son or just a servant. However, this child most likely is sick. So here, the centurion hears about Jesus in verse 3. When the centurion heard about Jesus, he sent some elders of the Jews to him, asking him to come and heal his servant. When they came to Jesus, they begged him earnestly, saying, "He is worthy of having you do this for him." Now, why would they say something like that? Jews oftentimes would not socialize with Gentiles, people who were not of their national descent. They would not socialize with the invading forces of Rome, and yet these Jewish elders are coming on behalf of the centurion, and they're saying, really, it's okay. We want you to go and see him because in verse 5, he loves our nation, and he even built our synagogue for us. So he was financially well off, so much so that he built a synagogue for the Jews to worship their God in. He was very likely intrigued by their faith and by their beliefs. And he was kind to the Jews. So the Jewish leaders are now vouching for this centurion. But the centurion, he sends them ahead on his behalf. Now, if you read this account in Matthew, it says that he actually showed up. And there's a little bit of a difference in the story there. And most people assume that it's because Matthew was condensing the story and was saying, well, these people were coming on his behalf, so it was as if he was there. And we don't exactly know all the details of that. But here in Luke, it's saying that he's sending them on ahead, and this actually makes the most sense in the context of this story. So he sends these Jewish leaders. Now, I don't know if the centurion was too busy, but most likely, as we'll see later, he sent them out of respect for Jesus. He knew that there were certain stereotypes that many people would have of the Roman soldiers. So these Jewish leaders come and they're trying to convince Jesus to come and heal the servant of this centurion. Normally they wouldn't socialize with them because they were oppressors and the taxes. Many of these Roman soldiers were immoral and ungodly people, and yet we see that Jesus went along and he was headed to the house of the centurion. In verse 6, it says, Jesus went with them, and when he was not far from the house, the centurion sent friends. So he first sends some Jewish leaders to come and invite Jesus to come to his house. But now we see the centurion is sending another messenger to Jesus. He sends friends to tell Jesus this. He says, Lord, do not trouble yourself, because I do not deserve to have you come under my roof. I mean, here's a Roman centurion. I mean, these people were proud, they were highly regarded, and yet he's saying to Jesus, I don't deserve to have you come under my roof. That is why I did not consider myself worthy to even come to you in person. But say the word, underline those three words. Say the word. It says, but say the word, and my servant will be healed. For I am also a man placed under authority, having soldiers under me, and I say to this one, go, and he goes. And to another one I say, hey, come over here, and he comes. And to my servant I say, do this, and he does it. So Jesus is accepting the invitation of this centurion. He's going there to perform a miracle to heal the servant, and these other people come along, these messengers show up. Now, the centurion was used to telling people what to do. You know anybody like that likes to tell other people what to do? That's what the centurion was doing. He was telling people what to do. First, he told the Jewish leaders, go and find Jesus. Then he says these other people to go and tell him not to bother coming. He's telling them what to do. He was used to having his orders be followed. Not only would people follow his orders, but he would follow the orders of those over him. Orders would come to him, he would read them, obey them, issue them out, and they would be obeyed as well. Many people, when they're facing physical sicknesses, diseases, they would travel for miles, sometimes thousands of miles on pilgrimages to go to a place that they think is holy and that may offer special healing powers. Some people would travel to see someone that they think has the ability to offer special healing powers, but this man's faith exceeded them all, because he says, I don't even want to go there. It took humility for him to say, I'm not going to go in the presence of this rabbi. It took humility. You know, this man, he could have thought very highly of himself. He was serving, after all, as a centurion in the greatest empire the world had known. He was a Roman soldier. He was a centurion. He could have been proud. He could have went and demanded Jesus to come, and yet he did not feel worthy even to have Jesus come to his own home. It took a certain level of humility. And he recognized in Jesus something that he found in himself. He recognized authority. He realized that Jesus was a man of authority. In your notes, Jesus has authority over all things. Did you know that Jesus has authority over the wind, over the waves, over sickness and disease? And the centurion understood the power of a word. He knew the power that words could hold in them. And now he is communicating with the one who has the power to speak life into inanimate objects, to speak life into those who are dead. He is speaking with the one who has authority over all things. Because he too is under authority. He understands how authority works. He gets a letter and he obeys it. And he realizes that the power is in the command, that the power is in the words. And he's thinking to himself, just as I tell a staff member to go and do something and they do it, you don't actually have to be there yourself to get something done. He realizes that there's power in words. Do we know the power of a word? Do we know the power of the word of Jesus Christ? So he comes up with an idea that no one else even realized was an option. See, up until this point, Jesus had been physically present for every miracle that he had performed. He was there touching people, laying hands on people, spitting on their eyes, for crying out loud. But he was there each and every time. He was present. Everybody knew if they wanted a miracle to happen, they had to go and see Jesus. Even the woman with the issue of blood said to herself, if only I can touch the hem of his garment, then I can be healed. No one knew that you could get a miracle any other way. This was unprecedented. And yet this outsider had the audacity, he had the naivety, the stupidity, if you would, to come up with this shocking idea that maybe Jesus doesn't even need to be physically here in order to do the miracle.